Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Match gameplay. So, obviously with the upcoming DLC, most of my focus has really been on Dark Elves, High Elves, and Greenskins, and so in this game we are playing as the Dark Elves against the Empire on Chill Flow. It's going to be a bit of a double cast, so got another pretty fun match for you guys coming up. But regardless, let's kind of break things down right away. And so lately I've been running builds without heroes, and it's been having quite a bit of success with it. This time around, of course, running Malekith, something I used to not really do. I'm having a little bit of wonky movement there, but either way, Malekith been having a lot of fun with him. Been bringing Supreme Spell Shield and Destroyer, so nice ability recharge debuff, as well as the Winds of Magic debuff. So lots of fun with that, and pretty potent. Of course, Spiteful Conjuration to debuff enemy armor. It's always a good choice against Empire, or really against any faction except maybe like Beastmen. I also did bring Power of Darkness to potentially get more Winds of Magic if I really need it. Chill Wind, of course, to break up squishy infantry, slow units down, that sort of stuff. Soul Stealer to heal Malekith, as well as just to drain big blobs, and then Gaze of Malice, of course, to disrupt enemy backlines and stand your ground. So lots of sort of skills, abilities, that sort of stuff here on Malekith, who himself is a decent sort of melee lord and combatant. And he is, as you can see on his Raptor, he's on a cold one, so nothing too fancy, just oriented at being a decent duelist and delivering some armor piercing. For the rest of my army, you can see really the core of it is actually, it's largely centered around these Reaper bolt throwers. Two of them, they can potentially snipe down Empire artillery, that's why they're pushed up here in the front, and chip away at cavalry, and if needed, they can even shut down enemy infantry a little bit with their scatter shot mode. They are backed by 2 units of Dread Spears, who are there just to protect them, and the reason my whole army is deployed back here is because I kind of did some in-head estimates. If my opponent put artillery all the way up in the front line, I wanted to make sure that the units that would be mauled by enemy artillery were not my main line here. In my main line, you can see 2 Argonath Executioners, 3 Blackheart Corsairs, which is a decent enough front line to take on anything Empire can throw at you, Malekith, the Witch Elves to cause rampage and to help the front line, and a single unit of Blackguard and Aggron providing some AP anti-large. Finally, Cold One Knights, once again, AP anti-large. These guys will trade well with Reiksguard, Knights of the Blazing Sun, anything like that. They just won't do very well against Demigryphs, and you can see they're over there. For my opponent, very cavalry heavy build. You can see for his lord, he did bring Karl, and I've been seeing Karl more and more lately. Not entirely sure why. Personally, I don't think he's very good, especially if you're not. Well, he's good in his own right, but I don't think he's very good if you don't bring a Lore of Life caster. My opponent did bring Golem Raz here. He did bring Stand Your Ground and Foe Seeker. Of course, he does have Blood Roar built in, so it's a pretty crazy leadership deal. But High Elves don't break that easily. And personally, I think that if you're not bringing Lore of Life, my opponent brought Lore of Fire here with Burning Head and Cascading Fire Cloak, and of course the Kindle Flame and Power Stone, but if you don't bring Lore of Life, I don't think Karl is that good of a choice, because he can easily get whittled down and killed off by a lot of things. For his front line, my opponent has gone pretty cheap and cheerful. 2 units of Halberdiers. Once again, an interesting choice. These guys do have AP and decent sort of overall melee stats, but they're very squishy, so personally not the biggest fan of them, especially given their cost, which is fairly high. It's at 650. Sigmar's Sons and 2 Swordsmen, so definitely not a front line that can go toe-to-toe with mine, but it does give my opponent a little bit of anti-large and a little bit of AP in there, so definitely can hold for a little bit. And the main strike force, of course, on the flanks, where there's 2 units of Outriders, actually. Knights of the Blazing Sun on one end, more Knights of the Blazing Sun over there, Empire Knights, and then the Royal Altdorf Griffites. So my opponent going very heavy on the Cav game, so something I've got to be wary of, and you can see already my bolt throwers teeing off on the Knights of the Blazing Sun, who are the only unit I can currently see. I can't really get shots on the Royal Altdorf Griffites, so I'm opening fire on the unit that I know I can whittle down and get some kills on. You can see already there's dead horses littering the field as the bolt throwers start taking a bloody toll, and it's not going to be super effective, but over time they will chip these guys down and make them put them in a much worse spot. And of course, they are picking off entire models with each shot. You can see they're already down by about these guys are already down by about a third of their HP, so definitely some decent stuff, given that the Reapers are pretty cheap and they're going to force my opponent to come engage me. In the meantime, you can see the front lines are about to clash. You can see me pulling back my spears last second. My opponent trying to get a little bit cheeky here, going in after my Cold One Knights with his Royal Altdorf Demigryphs. Not a bad move at all, but I do manage to kind of pull a last-minute switch and intercept them with the Blackguard. But obviously, the Blackguard was unbraced, but once they get stuck in, I do manage to catch these Royal Altdorf Griffites, turn around with the Cold One Knights, and now these guys have overextended horribly, and they're pincered and trapped, and they're going to start getting torn down really, really quickly. Over here, in the meantime, the spear's kind of sitting around. You might be wondering why I didn't commit them against the Royal Altdorf Griffites. The reason for that is that I'm still waiting for the Knights of the Blazing Sun to make a move. Still trying to snipe down these Knights of the Blazing Sun, and really kind of cautious, but because of all the nasty things my opponent could potentially do. So you can see a Blazing Skull going down here, or down my line of Blackheart Corsairs, down the line of Harganth Executioners, doing a bit of damage. It's going to roast some of these Blackheart Corsairs pretty significantly, actually. It does a lot more damage than I actually thought it did originally, and just completely wrecks them. In my turn, I do drop a Chillwind here. But this breach, a very significant problem for me, as it's now going to get flooded by these Sigmar Suns, and I really don't have the units to stop him just yet. But either way, you can see Karl Franz is getting jumped on by Malekith, and I'm not entirely sure who would win in a trade right now, because Karl, without Galmaraz, doesn't have the best of melee stats. He is being debuffed by the Witch Elves. But Malekith himself, not an anti-large specialist, hits a little weaker, and so I don't know. Probably Malekith right now, honestly, but definitely going to be a pitched fight. You can see the Witch Elves in there rampaging Karl. And out on the flanks, my opponent is getting a lovely charge here with the Knights of the Blazing Sun against my Blackheart Corsairs, while in the backline, the Royal Fighter is just getting massacred in the pits. Fortunately for me, though, a bit of lapse of micro because I was so focused on the front line. See that the Empire Knights plow into the Reaper Bolt Thrower, so big mistake on my part, and you can see the crew here is getting massacred incredibly quickly, but the Spears do get into the fight, and they're going to start tying these guys down, and doing a bit of damage to the Empire Knights, who obviously don't have the best melee stats. Over here on the flank, in the meantime, you can see Karl getting absolutely mauled with the Witch Elves in there, debuffing him and making him rampage. My opponent isn't really able to target Malekith, and so this is definitely a bit of a messed up fight here. My opponent has me surrounded. He's beating down the Witch Elves who are getting terrified, but Malekith is staying in there. As long as these guys rampage, they can't leave. In the meantime, over here, the Empire Knights do push through, but they're going to get caught by the Blackheart Corsairs. A bit of an atrocious and grindy fight, which the Blackheart Corsairs can probably win just by quantity. But either way, the Cold War Knights have actually rampaged, and now they're kind of debating what to do. They're getting caught up a little bit on the Sigmar Suns, but my opponent himself, while he did manage to demount or push my Reaper Bolt Thrower away, he's running out of troops. His Sigmar Suns here getting massacred by Dread Spears. Out on the flank, you can see another Burning Skull going down, but it's just not doing enough damage to the Harganth Executioners, and these swordsmen really can't stand up to them. Sure, the Blackheart Corsairs will rout, but, you know, they're not a crucial unit. Here in the pits, Karl Franz is absolutely near death. He's down to 94 HP. I do try to tag him with a Chillwind to slow him down, but it's just not fast enough. But either way, it doesn't really matter. At this point, the Sigmar Sun's getting slaughtered, and my Bolt Thrower is still online, so I'm going to be able to pull it away. My opponent didn't focus it out with the Outriders, which is, in my opinion, a big mistake, and I'm going to be able to set it up and start chipping away these Outriders once again. In the meantime, these Empire Knights are almost dead, and with that, my opponent's army is really basically on the cusp of collapse. The Bright Wizard here on a horse, not really a good melee combatant against this many Harganth Executioners. He doesn't stand a chance, even with him not having a bonus versus large, and the rest of the army will shortly follow him into an ignominious retreat. So you can see the Bolt Thrower here coming back online. It's going to be able to start chipping away at this cavalry, but at this point, my opponent's army simply shatters, and that will be that, as the Dark Elves do take the win. So a bit of a once again, there's a little bit of a freeze up here at the end. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I've been having this issue lately quite a bit. But either way, close victory for the Dark Elves. And looking over the stats, you can see the Witch Elves got no kills. But that should not be used as a gauge of how well they did. They shut down Karl, which was a huge move that really was pretty good for me. For this build, I do think it's a decent build against Empire. Obviously, you're running, and I've been running similar builds. I'm sure you guys have seen. But a surprising amount of success with the Reaper Bolt Thrower is decent enough at shutting down skirmishers. Obviously, I have been considering trying to ditch one of the Blackheart Corsairs, maybe getting a single unit of Dark Shards in there. It might not be super effective, but just having one flexible shooting unit to shut down units like Outriders would be pretty nifty. For the rest of it, the front line's powerful enough to crush Empire infantry. Unfortunately, if your opponent does get a nasty Burning Skull off, and I completely underestimated how much that would do, the Burning Head, and it did a lot. It roasted my poor Blackheart Corsairs, and I really didn't expect that. I didn't anticipate that much damage coming out of it. But as for the rest of it, the Blackheart and Nagaron just shut down Empire Cav hard. Harganth Executioners crushed their infantry, and Cold War Knights trade well with everything except the Demigryphs, as we discussed before. So they're, I think, a very good pick. They're a bit of a guided missile. You point them at a target, you right-click, and let them go. And they're gonna win against anything from Empire Knights through the Reiksguard. They'll win. Knights of the Blazing Sun, I think, as well. You'll get a win there. Of course, you will probably, Cold War Knights at that point are probably rampaging, and you might lose them to the rampage, but it doesn't matter. They're going to trade cost effectively, and that's really what counts, and I've been having great success with them that way. Reaper Bolt Thrower, decent pressure there. The Dread Spear is just providing extra mass and blocking power, and Malekith himself, just a decent overall combatant, so having a lot of fun with that. For my opponent's build, Halberdiers are not a good pick, I don't think, against Dark Elves. They really don't. I don't think it's a good idea. If you're just trying to save on the front line, just bring normal state troops. You don't need Halberdiers. The AP isn't going to make that much of a difference. They're still going to get shredded by Blackheart Corsairs. Dark Elves don't have good cav, so you don't really need this sort of anti-large presence. If you are worried about large, bring spears. Most of the most of the Dark Elf cav you're going to be seeing is lightly armored and or large monsters. Dragons only have 80 armor, which actually isn't that much when you really think about it. Hydras only have 50. You really don't have to worry too much about large targets that have a lot of armor. So I think that spears are perfectly fine. The halberdiers just got dumpstered here for very little gain. Sigmar Sun's a decent choice. The cav contingent being so heavy is somewhat viable. I definitely think it's decent. Outriders, I definitely think my opponent was a little slow in getting his Outriders into position to fire, which cost him quite a bit. And I think, really, artillery can actually be a decent choice against Dark Elves. If you bring some mortars or something like that, if you're able to hide them behind a crest so the Reapers can't hit them, they can do a lot of work. They can shred Witch Elves, they can shred Spears, and do quite a bit that way. Personally, I've been having quite a bit of success with just handgun and sort of classic infantry builds with Empire with just a handful of cav, so I think that's a generally better idea, but nonetheless, really my only main criticism is bring Karl without a life caster and bring two halberdiers. I think that's really the main flaw here. But nonetheless, great game to my opponent Vaniel here. I do hope you guys enjoyed, and we're going to be hopping right on over to second matchup for the Dark Elves. So this time around we are on Spite Reach Pass, and once again playing Dark Elf on, but this time we are going against Brettonia, and as you can see, I've kind of been messing around with some sort of defensive geometry, I guess. Really, I think it's rather important to try to kind of think these sorts of deployments through a little bit, and so let me kind of dive through it. Definitely, this build isn't exactly the same as the last one, though it still centers really around those Reaper Bolt throwers. For my Lord, I did decide to bring Malekith once again, coming in with only the Destroyer this time around. I didn't bring the debuff to Winds of Magic Recharge. I did, of course, bring Power of Darkness, Chillwind, and Soul Stealer, backed by, of course, Gates of Malice and Stand Your Ground. So the usual sort of assortment. Once again, he's on his Raptor, so decent enough in melee. He won't beat, say, Lewin on a Hippogriff or catch the Fanchantress, but he can do well against just about anything, and he can really kind of lay the smackdown on Brettonian Cav fairly effectively with his decent melee stats and AP. He's backed by a Sorcerer of Shadows here, once again on that poor little starving horse, coming in with Lord of Shadows, and even despite... obviously the Dark Elves are going to be getting a Lord of Death soon, which is going to be great, but at the same time, Lord of Shadows I think is still a very competitive lore, and I actually think that in many ways it's better than Lord of Death. Lord of Death is, I think, not as flexible as Lord of Shadows. So going through real quick, you can see I did bring the Darkstar Cloak, so between her and Malekith, I should have a decent amount of Winds of Magic Recharge, Malekith's Mystify Miasma, and Enfeebling Foe, as well as Occam's Mind Razor, all of which are pretty decent buffs and debuffs and damage spells, so I kind of figured, you know, no matter what my opponent brings, I'll have a counter. Front line, of course, 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers set up with a single spear in the middle here, ready to flex. If my opponent decided to do something cheeky, like Yeoman up in my face, they'd be ready. Blackguard a little further back. In case my opponent had brought Trebuchets, I didn't want the Blackguard once again. I didn't want him up in the front. Sometimes Brettonia isn't the easiest matchup for either High or Dark Elves, but sometimes you really... they do bring... Trebuchets are one of the somewhat common picks for Brettonia nowadays, at least against the Elves, and so I really didn't want my Blackguard taking an instant volley for a lot of HP. So I do have 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers set up, which can immediately start teeing off on the Knights, 2 Blackguard behind them, 2 Witch Elves for more Berserker Fury, or for more Berserker Rampaging ability, so that I have a little more coverage with that ability, because of course Brettonia tends to bring a lot more cav, and of course they can tear through Brettonian infantry really well. 3 Blackguard Corsairs making up the only main anti-infantry contingent. Honestly, Blackguard can out-trade Foot Squires, which are the best Brettonia can do in the infantry field, so you really don't have to worry too much about it. Blackguard Corsairs are just there to tear through cheap Brettonian crap infantry, like these peasants, these battle pilgrims, which are in here somewhere. There are some battle pilgrims out on the flanks. Even Foot Squires they'll trade okay with. And finally, in the very back, once again, a single unit of Cold War Knights, who I think are a decent choice. They, like I said previously, they're a bit of a one-shot weapon, but they can do pretty well. You throw them in, they tie a cav unit down, they'll beat Knights of the Realm, they'll beat Knights Errant, and they'll be cost-effective at it. For my opponent, as we've already seen, you can see 2 Knights Errant and Knights of the Realm on either flank, or a Knights Errant and Knights of the Realm on either flank. Pushing forward, of course, the Knights Errant have pretty trash stats, but they're cheap, and so my opponent can oversaturate my backline with them. Knights of the Realm, pretty decent stats, and a great charge bonus when they're in lance formation like this, and good weapon strength, so they can really kind of pile in. And with this much heavy cav, I'm going to have a hard time shutting it down. Obviously, 1 unit of Cold War Knights is not going to do the trick. For his front line, my opponent has some peasants to soak up arrows and charges and that sort of stuff. A paladin backing things up, which is something you don't see all that often. A Damsel of Heavens on foot with Wind Blast, as well as Curse of the Midnight Wind, so debuffs, and of course Power Stone. 3 Foot Squires, a unit of Battle Pilgrims, peasant bows with fire arrows on one end, peasant bows with pox arrows in the other. So going with some special weapons here just to provide some fire support, and then Grail Knights in the very back providing some extra damage with Albrecht de Bordelot riding along in the center. And Albrecht, once again, bit of an interesting choice. You don't see him too often. Coming in with Heroic Killing Blow, as well as the Wrath of Manon, which is a pretty crappy wind spell, if I do say so myself. And one more unit of Battle Pilgrims here in the back. So you can see shortly the Grape Shot does start flying, hitting these peasant bowmen, who I figured are the biggest threat to the artillery once my opponent does close the gap. Because they can, as I've often say, is you just use your archers to shut down artillery. It's actually a viable strat. It's not a bad idea at all. And you can see those bolts already whittling these guys down, breaking their morale. But you can see those fires already raining in and doing quite a bit of damage. Unfortunately, here I do misjudge a chill wind a little bit, and it only clips the back of these peasant pox bowmen, so really not doing very much. And my opponent here does manage to push his Grail Knights around the flank as my Black Guard are being forced around the side, trying to shut down these three spearheads of cavalry. So some rough stuff. You can see the artillery battery getting shut down hard, but we are doing our very best to tie down these Knights Errant, to spear down these Grail Knights, and really work these troops over. So all the while, though, getting focused out by the peasant bows. You can see over here, though, Blackheart Corsairs trading okay with the foot squires, tying down these battle pilgrims, and doing a good job as that fire from the bolt thrower keeps pouring in. And you can see over here my Witch Elves still sitting around, and the Cold One Knights are going to launch a charge here, interdict these Knights of the Realm, and with their charge bonus going, they are going to be able to start tearing these guys to shreds. And you can see they're doing very well. When you catch an opponent like this, my opponent has a very micro-intensive army, probably more so than mine, though. Of course, you do have to micro a bit when you're trying to just keep up with this much cavalry, but my opponent had a more micro-intensive army than me, so I'm able to kind of get a jump on him here and just start massacring these Knights of the Realm. Knights Errant, not as much of a threat. Same with these Knights Errant over there. So really the priorities here are these Grail Knights, are these two Knights of the Realm. Those are really the units that need to go. Here I do get a beautiful Soul Stealer on this blob of troops. You can see the Paladin getting beaten down pretty bad. Albrecht, of course, with no heals in the rough spot. You can see Chillwind just piling through, doing a lot of damage, as Malekith focuses Albrecht very heavily, doing as much damage as he possibly can. Over on the flanks, you can see the Sorcerers doing their best to tie this blob down. As my troops finally manage to rampage these Knights Errant, and my opponent does cast the Wrath of Manon here, but you can see that long wind-up time, and it does almost nothing. You can see it kind of splashes these Witch Elves a little bit, but it's basically useless. It's a really disappointing ability. You can see the Cold One Knights, despite getting taken 3-1, do manage to rout these Knights of the Realm. They are going to get slaughtered to a man in the wake of that, but definitely some great performance there. On the flanks, the Blackheart Corsairs are still holding their own against Foot Squires, and these archers have kind of been routed by a mix of Chillwind as well as, or of Gaze of Malice as well as Bolt Thrower Fire. In the meantime, these Bolt Throwers once again getting shut down, but my opponent is being forced to commit his Grail Knights into the fight here. They do get rampaged by the Witch Elves, and now it is going to be a very bad day for them. They don't have very good melee defense. They rely on that physical resist, but it's not that good, and I hit them with an Enfeebling Foe, so now they're in really bad shape here against the Blackguard, who just, despite being whittled down, despite being beaten down, they really just don't care. They're going to tear these guys down from their high horses and really beat them down. And it's really a pretty brutal kind of charnel house here. My opponent does make an effort to bail them out here with the Knights of the Realm diving in, but they do get hit by a Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma and join these Grail Knights in a miserable fate, getting slaughtered in the pits by Witch Elves and by more importantly by the Blackguard, who are just tearing these guys down from their saddle. Over here, my Sorcerer of Shadow running for dear life from Albrecht. You can see these Witch Elves holding their own, surprisingly. With some stand your ground, holding their own against these Foot Squires, holding their own against these Battle Pilgrims, which is really not an optimal fight for them. They've already been mauled heavily by the cavalry, but now we are getting some reinforcements with the Blackheart Corsairs and Malekith, and really my opponent's lines at this point are buckling. You can see there's the slaughterhouse here where all the Cold One Knights went down. You can see over on the flanks these Grail Knights fleeing from the field. Over here, the Knights of the Realm fleeing from the field. Knights Errant really badly mauled. So at this point, my opponent's army in full rout. You can see Knights of the Realm over here shattered, and it's a really bad shape. For me, my army is not doing too hot either. You can see two Bolt Throwers, though, coming back online. Over here, this courageous crew of Dark Elves, if you can call Dark Elves courageous, but either way, this 4-man crew of Dark Elves is going to be able to get another gun online. I do believe it's only enough to get one more gun online, but nonetheless, we do still have these 3 Reaper Bolt Throwers online, and one more with this crew. These guys are moving back to it. At this point, my opponent's army is getting kind of slaughtered in the pits, and really, my Infantry Corps is pretty badly mauled, but with the Spears, with the Blackguards still around, and Malekith being pretty healthy, things will work out rather well. So really, you can see here in the pits, once again, these Battle Pilgrims are getting rampaged, these Foot Squires are getting rampaged, they're getting pincered, they're going to collapse. The Witch Elves actually fought to the bitter end, they're getting killed in the end, but it really doesn't matter anymore because these guys are just getting pincered. With this much battle, with this much Blackguard and this many Blackheart Corsairs that are going to get slaughtered, you can see a Wind Blast going down, but really not doing enough. Albrecht gets a little greedy here, but does get caught by the Sorcerer of Shadows, actually getting a rear charge on him. And she actually hits him and does a bit of damage, and he's going to be forced to rout. You can see he actually hit her pretty hard, though. My opponent does get a Curse of the Midnight win there, trying to salvage the situation, but really at this point it's a GG as the Brettonian army simply shatters to army losses. So really some brutal stuff from the Dark Elves, and been having a lot of fun with them, really looking forward to their new units. Honestly, I don't think, for the Dark Elves, I don't think their new units are going to make much of a difference. The Sisters of Slaughter and the Doomfire Warlocks, I don't actually think either of them is going to make that much of a difference. So, but I'm looking forward to is definitely the Regiments around. I think there's going to be a lot more potential for the non-rampaging Dread Knights. There's going to be a lot more potential for cav play for the Dark Elves with them, especially in conjunction with Doomfire Warlocks. The new Dark Shards look amazing. Definitely the new Hargoneth Executioners look amazing with Frenzy and Guardian, and there's a lot of, I think, new opportunities for the Dark Elves that are coming out, though not perhaps due to the new units they're getting, though even there, the Doomfire Warlocks, of course, can drop 2 free Doom and Darkness, or Soul Blights, so very powerful stuff there. As far as this build goes and just this match, once again, a very similar build to the one I used against Empire. The 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers, they can break up archers. They're very cheap. It's important to keep on. These guys are only 700, and so they raked in 51 and 22 kills. They broke up the archer blobs. They shot down the cav a bit and forced my opponent to come to me. It's really one of the main benefits. You can win the artillery duel and force your opponent to come to you. You don't have to. You can take advantage of your superior infantry rather than kind of letting your opponent work you over and then come in on their own time or take their time engaging or any of that sort of garbage. So the Cold One Knights did an okay job. 27 kills despite getting tagged 3-1 by enemy cav. It's definitely pretty impressive, I think. Blackguard and Aggron, of course, absolute beasts. The Blackguard Corsairs, 85, 83, 87 kills. And granted, some of this was against peasants, but some of these guys never engaged peasants. Some of them were fighting battle pilgrims and foot squires the whole time. So getting this many kills is really rather impressive, and I definitely think shows just how potent they can be against the Brettonian sort of chaff troops. Dread Spears holding the center. Malekith doing a great job with disruption and extra and damage to Bordalo and that sort of stuff. Sorceress, of course, providing magical support, and really these Witch Elves, of course, tearing through the enemy as well. So all in all, I think this is a pretty solid comp against both Empire and against Brettonia. I think against Empire, you might want to be a little more cautious and maybe bring your Dark Shards rather than because the Empire does have some better shooting options, but especially against Brettonia, this can work perfectly fine. For my opponent, definitely a cool build. Once again, Alberic is one of those lords where you're best off bringing Lore of Life if you're bringing him, and the Wrath of Manon sucks, so unfortunately. So I think Lore of Life is a good choice, but Alberic can be decent. Just bring Lore of Life with him. The Damsel of Heaven's not a bad pick, and my opponent definitely got good use out of her. 58 kills there. Peasants are peasants, but he got 9 kills somehow. Paladin, definitely. I think the Paladin kind of flunked. I don't know what went wrong, but only 3 kills. Definitely wasn't, and he wasn't doing much damage to Malekith, so I don't know what happened there. Battle Pilgrims did okay. Same with the Foot Squires. They traded fine. They're fighting fairly cheap Dark Elf infantry, so they did as expected. Peasants got absolutely dumpstered, and the Cav, despite trashing the backline a bit and obviously grinding it out with Witch Elves in the long run just because of their heavy armor, really couldn't break the force because you can't break Blackguard very effectively. Not with Knights of the Realm, not with Grail Knights, not with much less Knights Errant. So it was rough stuff for my opponent, but nonetheless, great game to El Halkan here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it sort of fun. I hope you found this video fun. I hope it gave you some ideas for Dark Elves and built up some hype for the upcoming DLC. So, as usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching. If you have any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to share them down below, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, thank you all, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.